I'd like to make a few comments about people who still find themselves living away from home. And this happens in all sorts of ways. I've been recently working in some of the flood areas, and there are people that are still out of their houses from the floods from a couple of years ago. It's really very hard to be in temporary accommodation for such a long time. But I want to just mention that whenever we have to move out of our comfortable, familiar environment, if you look at yourself, and if we were to take measurements of your bodily processes, we find that you go into a state of arousal, not a huge one like when the storm occurred, but you're in a state of sort of a little bit keyed up and not able to relax, which is why, of course, home is so important. Home is so familiar and it's comfortable. We've got all our things around us and our history and so forth, and we just have this sense of relaxing. You know that when you maybe come home after a trip or something, it's just, oh, I'm home. And it's that relaxation that's a very important anchor point for our body and mind to actually come back to the home base in our bodies. And when we're in that home base, that's when our bodies can do a lot of the regeneration, the digesting, the releasing of tension, and the kind of regenerating of energy. And so I think it's inevitable that as long as you're in temporary accommodation, you don't have that personal attachment. It's not the way I like it. I would do it differently. I'd paint this a different colour, but it's not mine. I can't. You know, all these little irritations create this sort of background tensions. And we put ourselves into the state I call endurance mode. I'm not going to try and solve this problem because I can't. I just have to put up with it. And so this endurance mode, first of all, costs energy and attention, and that makes us tired in a way that's different from doing a hard day's work. And so, you know, we have to be aware of this process, because if we're not aware of it, what our body is and our mind are trying to do is saying, I don't like it, I don't want it to be like this, it should be different, I want this different. Every time I see the wall, I don't like that wall. But what we can do, because humans are very resilient, we can say, okay, this is home. This is going to be home for a while. I don't know how long. And try not to fight it, try to accept it. Now, I think what can be very important there is to try and ask yourself, how do I make the place I'm in more homely? Now, people have told me when they're in a rented accommodation things they've done to make it homely. Maybe put things there or bought stuff. I remember people after Black Saturday saying they went out and bought a whole lot of things they didn't really need, just to kind of gather a feeling of homeliness around them. So I think that kind of thinking about how do I make this the right atmosphere for me, and maybe particularly if the temporary accommodation is going to go on for a while, it's very easy to kind of be constantly disappointed. I thought I'd be out of here by now. I'm just going to improvise. I don't really like it. I'll improvise. It won't be long. Oh no, it is. I was talking earlier this week to somebody who had lost their house in the Black Summer fires, and there's been quite a few issues for this person, including some health problems and so on. And for all sorts of reasons, they are not still in they're not in their new house. In fact, their builder has constantly been saying, yeah, I'll send you your contract soon. It's the next thing I'm going to do. But he's been saying that for about 4 months. And so they're getting pretty frustrated. But they told me the other day that they've actually stopped calling him. They're going to just wait till it happens. They're confident it will happen, but previously they'd been calling, every couple of weeks, what's going on, is it ready? And they're just going to say, well, I'm going to stop struggling with it. I'm just going to focus on they've just had another move to get into a place that they're confident they can stay in until their house is built. So they're just focusing on living there now and making that homely. And I think that's, as much as anything, a change of mental attitude. It's so easy to stay engaged with the frustration and the unfairness and all of these things. I can remember in the Christchurch earthquakes, a woman spoke to me after a meeting, and she this was a couple of years down the track. She was so angry at all of the things that she felt were completely unfair. From my perspective, I could see that what she thought were unfair, from the point of view of the big system, were complexities about how to get all the services going and how to meet everybody's needs in time and so on. But because she saw it all as unfair, it aroused very strong feelings of anger. And so there she was, really so angry, and she'd been like that for a couple of years. It's not good for her health, not good for her relationships, and so on. And she's building up this tension. And so I think it's very important to think about the mood we're in and to actively manage it, manage how we feel. There's been research in the United States that says that some people just focus on the problems, trying to solve the problems, and the other people who say, I can't do much about the problems, I'm going to focus on my feelings, I'm going to do things to make me feel good and look after my family and so on. And when you look at the two, it doesn't make that much difference as to how fast they recover, but the people who focus on their emotional well-being and their quality of life are actually much happier at the end of it, and they are higher on some of the measures of the quality of life, whereas the other people have had a very frustrating and maybe lots of experiences of failure. So I think this again is where you can try and take into your own hands the quality of what's going on. You can't necessarily change the events, although the more you get into that state of arousal, the harder it is to make good decisions, to make good strategic plans, to organise things so that you're efficient and effective, so that we run round in circles and don't do things very well. So I think the more we actually recognise this continuing stress state, this low grade but constant state of stress, maybe it comes up as I want to eat too much, or I don't have any appetite, or I want to sleep all the time, or I can't sleep, or I get headaches, or there's a whole lot of physical symptoms of being in this state of arousal. And I think it's very important to actively take care of those things. Don't just overlook them because they're trivial. If they're causing you difficulties, particularly sleep, diet, exercise, these fundamentals, then I would say involve your health practitioner in them. Go to someone who will ask you, how you're sleeping, let me measure your blood pressure and so on, what are you eating? Because we can lose track of those. And I think what's so important is to create space for the things that make life meaningful, those quality of life activities. Of course there's a feeling of there's so much to do and I haven't got time to take time out and just hang out with my family because I've got to get up on the block and start doing stuff. Yes, but you probably won't be very effective if you haven't had a nice time. If you go home and have some fun with your family, or go to the movies, or whatever you like doing, visit some friends, just have fun. Or maybe instead of digging garden beds over and replanting trees, you just have a picnic. Just just come out of that state of chronic stress. Help your body and mind to find their home base, where things are going to come together. And it's very clear to me from many years of working with people after disasters that it's so important to allow time to, I use the term digest, to digest your experience. We can't do that when we're tensed up and working at problems, even if in the middle of the night we're working at problems. And you're trying to compose a letter to the council, or think of a conversation to the insurance company, or plan something. Actually, you can't do it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And if I think of my own experience, you're only working with certain parts of your brain, so you can't actually think of solutions, or the solutions you come up with in the morning don't make much sense. So you might as well just not worry about it. And I don't know, listen to some music or read a book for a little while and have a bit more sleep. So it's this is the way in which anxiety works. Anxiety glues us to situations and says, you better keep working on this because otherwise it might not work out. No, that's not correct. It's not a good time to work on this at 3 o'clock in the morning. So what will I do to help myself sleep? Or if I can't sleep, relax, just relax. That'll be very helpful for you. What won't be helpful is tossing and turning and thinking, if I don't get some more sleep, I'm going to be... you know, this becomes the self-fulfilling prophecies of stress. And so to break out of that, because it's so frustrating to be in a situation which you can't bring to an end, an unpleasant situation. Everyone has them in different ways. You might be in a job you don't like, or you're waiting for something to happen. But so what you can't do is change the main problem, but what you can do is change your experience of the problem. So one way of doing that is make sure you keep in touch with other people who are in the same position. And there's a term I use to describe what happens there when you talk to somebody who's having the same problem as you in their own way. I call it depersonalise. It's not just me dealing with this very unfair blow that life has brought me, and I didn't deserve it, and I had a nice, you know, etc., etc. But it's us. We're part of a community. And once we're together, well, we can put our arms around each other and we can cry together, or we can have a nice meal and laugh and tell jokes and make up stories about insurance companies and local government people that are helping us, and laugh about it, and talk about the eccentric characters we come across in our community that we didn't know about, you know, and actually have a sense of being part of a big event. Because in the future, you'll probably look back on this as a really important turning point in life. So this is actually taking an initiative. Now, for some people, that's just spontaneous. Other people, you know, probably need a bit of a suggestion. And this comes back to the point I made about social involvement and being engaged, and how we learn from other people. It's so wonderful when you see you're feeling angry and irritable and unhappy, and you talk to somebody in the same situation and they say, you know, what I've decided is I'm going to stop worrying about it, I'm going to work on my garden, I'm going to do this, I'm going to study that, I'm going to, you know, I've got a bit of time here. You know, some people I know have spent a lot of time preparing their gardens in pots, you know, so that they're thinking about all the plants they want, they're collecting them, putting them in pots. So there's got this, every part of their temporary accommodation has got pots in it, but they're really looking forward to taking these pots up on the block and planting them when the right time comes. So anything that gives us a sense of effectiveness, control, initiative, achievement, fulfillment is going to compensate the things we can't control, the frustrations and this, and take us out of this chronic state of tension and stress, which is so expensive in our emotional life. I guess one other point here is trying to keep track of the emotional situation. People can drift into an emotional state without noticing it. We're so busy dealing with things. The people around us can see. They can see, geez, poor old Robert's off his face. He's rushing around like a headless chook. And I'm not actually thinking about myself. I'm thinking, oh, I've got all these things to do. Get out of my way. I've got to get this done. And somebody is only going to say, you're pretty short-tempered. Do you realise that? Am I? No, I'm not short-tempered. It's just people are so stupid and annoying. You know, we actually focus on the environment, but it's very important to come back to ourselves, because our ability to manage things depends on self-awareness. The only thing we can really control is ourselves. But if we control that, that will change things. It'll change the way they seem, and that releases energy. The emotional restrictions can be that I only have a very narrow range of emotions. I feel tired, I feel irritated, I feel exhausted, I feel worried. No, we've got to actually be aware, I haven't had fun for a long time, I haven't laughed. So we need to do something. I haven't relaxed, just do nothing. On a nice day, wouldn't it be nice just sit in the sun, if it's not too hot, or the shade, and do nothing for an hour. And get used to doing that. When we're tensed up, we can't stop. So try and keep all those things going. Otherwise, what we'll find is when you move back, it'll be very hard to enjoy it, and probably people won't be getting on too well. The health will be not as good as it was, so you end up with a new set of problems when you settle back. And I think that takes us to the question of those people who will be maybe moving back soon and how they might prepare.